Dallas Cowboys Training Camp coverage, powered by AA Best Bail Bonds, and in part by Texas Cheer Liquor, Cowboys AC and Heating, and Southern Recipe Small Batch Pork Rinds.
Come on in, Brad Sham.
Brad Sham.
The voice of the Dallas Cowboys.
The legend himself is walking in here.
On this warm day in Oxnard, California.
We're talking about the heat wave, Brad, that we're going through. 75 degrees. That's a little hot. That's all right.
77 for us here, and it is warm. But when you get a legend that shows up, let's see.
That's it right there.
That's the one. Stop with the legend.
The voice of the Dallas Cowboys, who doesn't want to be called legend. But you are.
Thank you very much.
It is always an
Raise
honor.
your expectations.
Well, I mean, because, I mean, Brad, I think about, as long as I've gotten to know you personally and how cool that is, I think about some of my favorite radio guys, whether it was Milo Hamilton with the Astros or, being here in Southern California, this week and the passing of Vince Scully and, just what those voices mean. I know you obviously don't want to go here, but I mean, I know you.
What do you mean to talk about when I'm dead? Is that,
well, no, but
where you're going?
No, about what?
Jason's he's uplifting. He takes everything and puts it up.
I hope you feel good.
But what you mean? I mean, when people hear your voice, people driving around right now going, "Holy crap, they're talking to Brad Sham."
Yeah, and that's Cowboy football.
Or else they're thinking, "What is it? What does that mean? What does he mean?" Thank you. I do understand it. That's a byproduct of the longevity, and I appreciate it. I do not take it for granted. I don't take it for granted because I was that kid. There were guys when I was growing up in Chicago. Jack Brickhouse was that guy.
Oh, yeah.
For me. And as a kid in the Midwest, you heard Jack Buck everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Buck was that guy for me. I got to be friends with Jack Buck ultimately, and that was just amazing. So I understand what you're saying, Jason, and I appreciate it, and I don't mean to brush it off.
Sure.
I'm not comfortable thinking of myself in those terms because I know me too well. but I do understand that it's part of the job. It's a part that I relish and appreciate, and I hope it lasts for a while longer.
When you were growing up and listening to all these legends that you were talking about, did you always know this was what you wanted to do?
I think I knew, not as a real little kid, but I did know from about late adolescence, early teenhood, that I'm trying to think how old I was when my family moved back to Chicago, which is where I was born. My dad's work took us back there, and so I would have been, I'm going to say 14 or 15, and it became very clear to me I wasn't going to be playing second base for anybody in the major leagues or anything else. And I literally had an epiphany one day because in Chicago back then, WGN carried everything.
Yeah.
So especially during the summer, I would watch the Cubs in the afternoon and the White Sox at night. I'd watched every game. Or if I wasn't watching, I was listening. And one day, a little light bulb went off in my head that I was hearing the same announcers every day. Well, that meant they had to be at the ball game every day.
Gotcha.
I want to go to the ball game every day. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go to the ball game every day. And I didn't even have a sense that was a thing you could do for a job. I kind of got with that a little bit later in high school, and from then, that's really all I've ever wanted to do.
Brad Sham joining us here on the Blitz, the voice of the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously every Sunday right here on 94.1 FM, you're going to be able to hear Brad calling the games on the Cowboys Radio Network. Obviously, we're thrilled to be still, and again, the Cowboys affiliate in San Antonio, and I look at this team. And while it's the third year for Mike McCarthy, first real training camp. I mean, just the differences this year versus last year because of all the protocols. What are you seeing that's different about this team?
I think the training camp was pretty normal from a player's standpoint last year, but not the off season. So you're absolutely right that it's the first normal full calendar year that he's had. So what we're seeing, I think, is that, I mean, they're very young in most cases. There's a lot of enthusiasm. Dak Prescott was just asked at his news conference a few minutes ago about the receiver talent level having regressed. And he said, I don't look at it that way. I just look at all the opportunities that we have. And I understand that if you're him, you can't drop back in the pocket and think, wonder where Amari Cooper would be right now.
Yeah.
That's not an option. And he is a very positive and forward-looking individual. That's his job. I think for the rest of us who just look at it, you look at the players that they lost, and you say they didn't sign any high-profile free agents. They signed a couple of guys who are going to help them, but they didn't sign any high-profile free agents. They lost some guys who played a lot of football for them on some pretty good teams. So it doesn't look on paper like they are as good as what they were at the end of last year. And on paper, it looks like Philadelphia is better than they were. So it looks like it's going to be a more difficult fight. But out here is where you pour the foundation for the house and put up the studs, and then you spend the next few weeks kind of putting up the drywall and everything. And then once the regular season starts, you just know you're going to have to replace and renovate some of the furniture.
Sure.
That's what the whole season is about. So I think what we see is a first introduction to some of the young players that we have not ever seen before. And do they look like they're going to have something? And some of them do. Some of them look pretty good. Defensive line looks like it might be pretty good. But, let's reevaluate. Let's reevaluate it again once we get into the middle of September, and you have to play complementary football. And it's not just even in a preseason game where your defensive linemen, maybe they look like they're putting pressure on, but then the game becomes complementary. Then once they play Tampa, then they have to slow down the Tampa defense and put their own defense in a position to play the game they want. But all that works together. You can't see any of that out here. So all you can do is look at some of the players you've never seen before and say, that looks like it might be something.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it is.
Brad, you've been around obviously the Cowboys for a while. You've seen and heard a lot of things. There's always a storyline involving the Dallas Cowboys, it seems like. And how do you handle that? How do you respond to that? Do you stay away from it? I mean, this year, obviously, the Mike McCarthy thing and with the Sean Payton deal running around, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. My job, thankfully, my job's evolved.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I was doing this every day in addition to the games. And when you're doing this, you have to kind of address that stuff,
right.
Especially when I was doing it, when there weren't several stations all at once, or like two shows in town. So thankfully for me, I don't have to address it at all, because my job is to describe the game. And when they play Tampa, Sean Payton won't have anything to do with that game.
Right.
And we will have to evaluate, as we always do, every Dallas coaching decision in context of winning or losing that particular game. I always try to lend perspective, because one thing I've learned is that it's a mistake to knee-jerk early in the year. I always think of a football season as like a mini lifetime. And so by the time if you think of a football season as a person, right now it's a toddler. When the season starts, if the lifespan is going to be 80 plus, then you're talking about someone in their late 20, in their early 20s. That's when the season starts. So how many of us would like to have our whole future judged and evaluated based on what we did in the first few years of our 20s? Anybody?
No.
Anybody?
No.
Okay, so...
And thank God there was no social media when we were in our early 20s.
Exactly. So you don't want to start off playing catch-up, But sometimes you do, and you catch up. So it just depends on the whole. You got to let it play out. So I have learned not to overreact. My biggest challenge, frankly, is keeping myself from overreacting to people overreacting. It makes me crazy sometimes. I try to minimize my time on social media because it just frustrates me. Well, and it'll play out how it plays out.
Yeah. You are active on Twitter.
I don't think I'm active. I think I go in fits and spurts. I'll jump out there and stick my nose in and then run like hell. And then,
when I see you're going back and forth with somebody on something, I pay attention to that because I know where it's coming from and the knowledge and the background of where it's coming from.
So you know what I've learned to do, Jason?
Uh-huh.
Before I respond, if it's someone I don't know, the first thing I do is see how many followers they have.
Yeah.
And if I am responding to someone with 84 followers and putting a big a big mouthpiece out there for somebody who nobody knows who they are, then in the words of the great Todd Archer of ESPN Dallas, I have been drawn offside. And I have been guilty of being drawn offside. It's not productive. So sometimes with someone like in our business or someone who I know who I think knows better, I'll push back a little bit. Sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes they're wrong, and almost always I regret having got involved in it. I wish I hadn't even brought it up.
Well, it's always entertaining, though.
Well, good. That's what it's there for, right?
Brad Sham joining us here on the Blitz. We're kind of up against the time.
Yep.
Brad, a player or two that have really stood out to you that you didn't expect so far at camp.
So that's the you didn't expect is the key part of it for me. I think nobody knows who the kid Bland is. Is it Deron Bland, the cornerback, number 30? And I think he's going to make the team. And nobody expected that because nobody's been talking about him. From Fresno State, rookie free. Oh, they drafted him. Rookie fifth-round pick, Deron Bland. But I think he has looked good. Marquise Bell. But we saw that in the spring. Bell jumped out right away from a rookie free agent safety. I think he's got a really good chance to make the team. And then, again, I don't know if it falls into the you didn't expect category, but I asked some people in the spring at mini camp time, some people involved in the whole passing game structure, tell me, I do this almost every year, tell me a young wide receiver I'm not watching that I ought to be watching. And Dennis Houston was the name that came back. So there's a couple of guys.
Dennis Houston, who's from San Antonio, played at Warren High School in San Antonio.
Right.
Stephen Jones brought him up with us. Of course, I think he realized he was only, I don't know if he knew he was from San Antonio. Dak, is this an undrafted free agent that could end up being one of those great stories?
Yeah. I mean, first, if he makes the team, he's one of the great stories, right? And then if he turns out to be Miles Austin. And that actually, Miles is the guy 1 year out here when Romo was still the quarterback. I stopped him coming off the field, and I asked him that very question. Tell me a wide receiver I should be watching that I'm not paying attention to, and he said Miles Austin.
Wow.
And so since then, I try to do that. And so I would say that we don't have to put him in the Drew Pearson category to say he's a great story. If an undrafted free agent who played college football at Western Illinois comes into camp and makes the team, that is a great success story. And then whatever happens from there builds on it, but I would say he has the makings. And it's such a great opportunity for him and for Tolbert, who everyone knows because they drafted him high, and even Semi Fehoko, who they drafted last year, and all of these guys without Washington and without Gallup, they're all getting. How about Vasher? And I don't know how complete a game Vasher has, but he's got some game, and outside of people who watched him play in the Big 12, he hasn't played in almost 2 years. So that's a pretty good story. A lot of those receivers are going to get there, but I think Houston is at the top of that list.
That's great news. That's great news for us and everybody in San Antonio.
Sure.
We're obviously pulling for that kid for sure.
Yeah, me too. He seems to really want to do it and do it the right way, and I think it's all I think some of the media stuff, I don't know if he was quite ready. He got ganged up on by a bunch of guys yesterday. And when it started off as one guy, and then when 6 other people came and 4 more cameras, I was just standing back and watching it. You could kind of see his eyes glass over.
Yeah.
I don't know if I signed up for this, but he'll be fine.
Yeah, the funny part with that was Greg Simmons that grabbed him from
right,
KSAT.
And there's Greg right in front of us.
Then it started going and got bigger, and then we had him on yesterday live, and he was great.
Yeah.
Although a little hesitant, then I played him what Steven had said and what Dak had said, and that loosened him up. He'll be fine.
Most of these rookies now they're a little looser than they used to be, but I still have always found that most rookies are somewhere between withdrawn and overly cautious, even if it's not their temperamental, not their normal temperament, not their personality, because they don't know. Now he might know you guys, but he doesn't know the rest of us, and they don't. What do you do? What did he mean? What did he mean by that? What do you want from me? And then when they do it for a little while, then they get it.
Yeah.
Then they figure out they're usually fine.
Brad Sham, voice of the Dallas Cowboys. You'll be able to hear him all season here on San Antonio Sports Star 94.1, the home of the Dallas Cowboys in San Antonio. Appreciate you taking the time.
Always.
I know
Been
you got
fun,
your lunch.
Brad.
I know you're hungry.
Yeah, I am hungry. Matter of fact,
Appreciate it.
right, I am. I'm
More
going to
as
go eat now.
we continue here from Oxnard.